Yes, I want to let everyone know this will be recorded, but I'm going to wait one more minute to start just in case someone else signs on. All right, this is Steve Dodge, Assistant City Engineer of Emerald Grove Heights. You're here for the local stormwater impacts meeting. This is to make sure we are working with the citizens of Emerald Grove Heights and the public on addressing any stormwater needs of the city and what is called our municipal stormwater MS4 program that we work through permitting annually with the MPCA. Now, if I can just get this to move. So I'll be presenting. I just want to acknowledge Nicole Portugal, our engineering technician, who helped prepare a lot of the event and slides. And there's my contact information if anyone needed to get a hold of me. And the agenda is going to be, I will go through a presentation. It's basically going to go the history of SWIP and MPDS and the MS4 program, what is called the 6 minimum control measures, MCMs, that the city is required to report to the MPCA about every year annually, and the accomplishments and goals that we've gotten through. So we're in the MS4 permitting program with the MPCA. That is a document we put together each year. We have an example of the document, the draft version that is here on site. And it involves a couple different components. The MPDES system is on the left here. It's the National Pollution Discharge and Elimination System. And that's just to make sure that construction activity within Emerald Grove Heights and the state is not polluting our waters of the state. And in order to get an MPDS permit, you have to have a stormwater pollution prevention program and a SWIP. And a SWIP for a city is a program, and a SWIP for like a development is a document that they need to put together for the city and the MPCA. And the MPCA will give a permit for any development that's over an acre of disturbance area. And that's how they get their MPDS permit, is by providing a SWIP document saying how are they going to make sure they control their erosion and sediment control and other things that happen with construction. So the MPDS and this MS4 system really was been created based off the 1972 Clean Water Act that was passed by Congress. And that was to address the pollution that, from point sources, such as wastewater treatment plants and construction activity, industrial sites. So basically what that allowed things to happen after 1972 is there was a separation of what was a stormwater system and a sanitary system. Before that time, many sanitary systems actually dumped into stormwater systems and then into our lakes, streams, and ponds. So. So these meetings are important because we want to interact with the and educate, with our citizenry and receive comments from the public on Grove Heights stormwater program, in any one of the measures that we're responsible for, and also just do an annual review of our progress and how we're doing. And of course, we also need to hold public engagement meetings like this in order to meet the MS4 permit requirements. So the 6 minimum control measures that the permit would like us to do is, public education outreach. Then we have to have the look in ways we can have public participation and involvement. We also review annually our stormwater system and identify illicit discharges through a detection and elimination system. And we look at all of our construction sites going on throughout the city annually, and verify they're meeting the stormwater runoff control measures. And we also have what's called post-construction, but this is the permanent stormwater facilities that are out there. We're responsible, obviously, for the city stormwater system and ponds, but we also will work with our partners that have private stormwater systems and ponds. And then we have the pollution prevention and good housekeeping for our own municipal operations. So that is our parks, our salting, anything we do, our own stockpiles in the Grove Heights, anything we do that could have an impact on stormwater quality. So just going a little deeper into what are called minimum control measures 1 and 2, which is the public involvement, outreach, and participation. We do several articles in Insights newsletter each year, and that circulates to over 36,000 residents, and that is one way we can share, some basic public education needs for rain garden programs, or maybe proper ways to get rid of your leaves. So many things that can impact stormwater. There's also the landscaping for clean water workshops that we work with through Dakota County, and we have residents that annually participate in that. And there is also design courses, and there's a couple of rain gardens built out of those courses from residents participating, both rain gardens and native plant gardens. And then we also update our Public Works webpage for MS4 information, which has the city's SWPPP and annual report on it. So we obviously hold this annual meeting, but there's other things that we are working on constantly for public education outreach with our partners in stormwater. And that includes the Board of Water and Soil Resources, Bowser, Dakota County Soil and Water Conservation District, the Lower Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, and the Egan Grove Heights Watershed Management Organization, and the Minnesota City Stormwater Coalition. We have representatives from the city working directly with and on the Egan and Lower Mississippi watershed management organizations, and we work regularly with Dakota County Soil and Water. And by working with some of these groups, there are state fair exhibits that are done through the Lower Mississippi River Organization, and the Egan IGH WMO also does rainbow programs. They provide library clean water bags for public and children to be able to explore ways to keep stormwater clean. We also collaborate with these other stormwater groups that I have mentioned. The one thing we do annually is verify if there's any illicit discharges in Inver Grove Heights. And, you know, a very common illicit discharge would be like an accident where there's an oil spill or something like that. And we have protection measures to try to stop such spills from getting into the stormwater system and downstream waters. And so we work with public safety, we work with the state when these type of events may occur, but there are larger events, but there are smaller items that we keep track of and work with contractors, developers, residents, and businesses through sediment erosion, spills and accidents, industrial sources that may have some waste, and it could be failing septic systems and also illegal dumping. So there's, or it could be a contractor that is illegally dumping something on our streets or in our drains that's reported to us. So this year, this review, what we're doing right now is for 2021, which is last year's activities. And so we update our storm sewer maps each year also, in the process of reviewing our whole stormwater system, and then working with our system. We also inspect at least 20% of our stormwater outfalls in our ponds each year, just to verify that they're in good working condition. Through these processes, we only had one illicit discharge identified last year that was reviewed and investigated, and we did put a notice of violation out for that illicit discharge, which means that now we're required to provide cleanup. So when you get to the construction site stormwater and runoff control, we basically sent out 172 erosion sediment notice violations. So you can, a lot of extra construction activity in Inver Grove Heights. And so our staff, technicians, and consultants, we hire to oversee construction activity. We make sure that the contractors, developers, and anyone working in the city stays in compliance and doesn't impact our waters in a negative way. So we do weekly inspections of all construction sites throughout our city, specifically those sites that are an acre or larger in disturbance, but we also work in keep track of smaller sites, of building sites in that may be promoting erosion, and it may need to be managed better. But besides weekly, if there's any half-inch rainfall event or bigger, we'll do another inspection to make sure that after a major rain event, all their erosion control measures, such as silt fence that holds back sediment, is being maintained and corrected if it has had a failure. So as part of the permanent stormwater management system, which is by MPCA called post-construction, but that's just the systems that have been built throughout the city and now are in place. That's ponds, manholes, pipes, and network, our stormwater network. So we enforce, the 1-inch infiltration requirement throughout the city when the projects are being designed and developed. We also have two stormwater management plans in our city. One is the 4th generation stormwater management plan that covers all the requirements of you doing development in the city of Inver Grove Heights, except for there's a northwest area, 3,000 acre area, northwest part of our city where a lot of development's occurring right now. And that area there has a series of landlocked basins where no stormwater really leaves that whole 3,000 acre area. And so we have a more stringent component rather than the 1-inch infiltration requirement. We have what's a 5-year stormwater volume requirement. So that's more like a 2.6 inch requirement. Basically, it's much more stringent, and that's because we're trying to protect the natural basins we have in the Northwest area and make sure they continue to function like they did prior to any development coming around them. We also update our citywide stormwater inventory. We have 236 BMPs, which would be basically ponds and infiltration basins and features like that. 113 miles of stormwater sewer and over 1,400 catch basins that we maintain throughout the year. So our maintenance staff, who we should acknowledge, spends a lot of time also maintaining our stormwater system throughout the year. And then we have continue with our private stormwater facility maintenance oversight program. So last year in 2021, the 13 plan reviews we're showing are basically major projects. Those are projects over 1 acre or larger. That's what we keep track of for the purpose of this report. However, we do many more than that, dozens more reviews of small building permit style projects that come through our city. And engineering is part of the sign-offs of building permits when they come through our city. So we're one of the departments that need to sign off on it. So that means we also get an opportunity to review it and make sure measures are being taken to handle construction activity in a proper manner to protect our waters. And so we have 11 development projects that we're requiring, large stormwater facilities and maintenance agreements that we work out during the planning and approval stage with the staff and city council. The last MCM, minimum control measure, is 6, and that's pollution prevention and good housekeeping. And that's our own municipal operations. So we inspect, as I mentioned earlier, our outfalls and ponds about 20% a year. And in order to cycle through that every 5 years, and then we can identify through that any minor or major maintenance activities that occur. And what we consider a minor maintenance activity is something our maintenance staff has the equipment and the staffing to be able to do the repairs themselves. Major maintenance activities are something we typically have to hire out to a contractor. And then our maintenance staff also does street sweeping in all of our city streets every spring and fall. Sometimes periodically, again, if there's something occurs that needs sweeping. And then public inspections of the stormwater facilities. So some other items that are out there is we construct stormwater quality improvements on city and county projects. We work partnership on those type of activities. We continue to do a private development review and agreements. And I spoke about what's called the IDDE, the illicit discharges, our MS4 program or NPDS, but we make sure our staffing gets annual training on this so they're up to speed on the most current requirements. And then we create pamphlets for City Hall, and we have a roadside rain garden program that's on the city website. We have over 60 roadside rain gardens that have been put in by the city over many years of reconstruction projects. And that's to help catch that first flush of pollutants off the street and get them treated in a rain garden. So other objectives that we want to do for the future is we want to develop a televising program for our stormwater system for asset management and to verify areas in need and repair of our stormwater system. We want to continue to apply for stormwater grants. We've been very successful over the years in getting those, which helps with some of the cost of improvements. And we also have developed and will continue to improve capital improvement plan for stormwater purposes. And the goal this year is to make sure we have a 5-year plan that gets before council in the next year or two, and that we then work out a way to fund that. And then you have the MS4 permit compliance updates that we do annually. And we do want to identify more funding revenue for stormwater improvements. And that's something we are working with council on. And we do have bioretention standards and details that we want to keep on our city website for citizens, developers, contractors to have available to them, and further develop what are called our municipal operations, our enforcement response procedures, which are ERPs, and our standard operation procedures of our maintenance staff, which are called SOPs. The other objectives is we want to continue to work with administer our Northwest area standards as that 3,000 acre area. The northwest part of our city continues to develop. And we will continue to work with our partners of the Lower Mississippi River, Minnesota City Stormwater Coalition, MPCA, and the Egan IGH watershed, and Dakota County Soil and Water also are the main partners that we continue to work with. So other than that, I think the other items in green, we've kind of already identified. And that is the end of my presentation, and we will now open it for questions. We have a couple people here that are live in person, and then we have a couple of people that are also on the web. So you can either type in your question, or Nicole can unmute you and you can ask your question that way. So feel free to ask the question if you're live here too in person.
Does the city work with the DNR for planting or putting fish in the ponds and lakes in the area? And do they do any testing for invasive species?
Okay, so the question is, the city working with the DNR on basically, placing fish, in our the public waters of the state, and do we work with any testing of the waters to identify contaminants or invasive species, basically. So yeah, the city is not participating in any of the testing measures that is out there for following species of lakes and that. So we don't, one thing is we don't even have enough funding right now to maintain the infrastructure, the stormwater system. And then secondly is that's something that actually hasn't been brought up before. I've been doing this for a few years now. So it's a good point. We'll log down that question, in our annual report. So when you ask, when the citizens submit questions, and we basically are, if it's a question of importance that needs a response, we typically need to at least add that to the annual report. And if it's a question of significance, if it's something we don't need to act on, it may not get in the report, but at least we'll acknowledge a question was asked. So, yes.
So I remember in the report you said something like there were 172 discharge citations.
Yeah.
So do we track, here's the companies that have a known record of having a problem, and then would we give their permits more scrutiny in the future? Or what comes of that? So
the question is, there was almost a couple hundred notice of violations for erosion control measures and stuff like that of the stormwater program. And the question is, do we keep track of who are the bad apples, basically, so we can scrutinize them a little more? And the answer is we work with a lot of the same contractors and developers over time. And yes, we already kind of know those that we need to maybe keep track of closer or scrutinize. We don't keep a list. No, we don't do that. But we, everyone is pretty much treated the same as far as following the MPDS guidelines. And so the bottom line answer is we treat everyone the same as far as meeting the basic measures that they need to meet. The violations typically are basically done within 24 to 48 hours in most cases. And if they do not comply, we have other measures. It's actually written into our stormwater management plan. We have other measures to take them into violation where we can do basically an order to stop their project, through building inspections. And that can get a developer's or a contractor's attention real quickly. It's called a stop work order. And so all that is written in our code. And if it goes even further, we can take them into violation further, where we can take them to court or fine them. So we actually have measures where we just kind of keep stepping it up, the enforcement action. Normally once we hit the second step, which is stop work order, once we hit that stage, they come into compliance real quick, because a stop work order means that not only is the development stopped, it means the house building is stopped. Everything is stopped until you come into compliance. So it's a pretty strong measure. And we only use that when there's someone that's substantially in compliance, obviously, but it works very well. Any other questions out there?
Do we have any from our online participants?
Okay, we can go ahead and unmute them too, if it's more comfortable for them to talk.
I did ask if they wanted to.
Okay. So no questions from the online. Any further questions from anyone here?
Does the city have a process by which volunteers can do some planting to avoid erosion around the lake, or in some cases, just to clean up the trash that accumulates over a period of time?
Okay. So the question is, do we have a city program to work with plantings around the lake or cleanup of trash? And the city does not participate in a program for citizens to clean up trash within our system, but we do promote them to contact the city maintenance staff, and the city maintenance staff is basically, it gets put on a tracking record so they know to go out and clean an area. And that system usually works pretty good. And as far as working with landowners on vegetation maintenance, I'm not aware of any program we have, but typically the county or the Dakota County Soil and Water may have some programs that would you can enter into for shoreline restoration, but the city does not have any programs on shoreline restoration that I'm aware of.
Some of the land around the lakes is our land, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Of course, that would be the place where some of that work would be done.
Sure.
I know at one time, people who lived in the lakes, one of the people around Cinder Lake did some planting years ago.
Sure.
And I know scout groups and volunteer groups, they sometimes clean up the trash on highways, of course, on the lake. And everything else.
Yep.
It does accumulate because of businesses.
Yeah. So the general comment we have is from, there's a member here that lives near Simley Lake, and that maybe the city can look at opportunities to, because there's parkland, within that lake also, to help with vegetation maintenance and around the lake, and or work with the citizens on a volunteer cleanup program like they do at the highway program. So those are good comments. We'll have to talk to the Parks Department and see what they think of that. So, any other questions out there? Okay, well, I do appreciate looks like about 4 people got on web-based virtual session, and we're also doing a live session at the same time. So there's a couple people here in person. If you could just share your basic information with Nicole Portugal, who is monitoring the web-based portion. Do you have at least their name?
Their name.
Yeah, okay. So we do have your name, which is good, so we know who participated. So I appreciate that. If you have any further questions or information, there are comment cards here in person that someone can write something down. You can also message myself or Nicole. And I will go back to the starting page where it has my contact information. And so feel free to send me an email at sdodge@ighmn.gov. And if there's a further comment you may have wanted to make or a question you may want to ask. That being said, are we about done then? Okay, looks like a couple of people just joined or, oh, okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone. We're gonna stop right here, and I appreciate everyone for participating in the annual meeting. You have a good day. You can stop recording now.